I want to show you a process for composing for beginners. When you first start composing, it's very overwhelming, or it can feel very overwhelming. Where do you start? What chords do you use? How do you write a melody? How do you fill the texture? All these questions will come up, and you might start with a couple of bars and then, it might sound okay, and you kind of feel stuck and overwhelmed after that. So I want to show you a process that will help you get a complete piece of music with melody, chords, accompaniment, form, phrase structure, melody, like everything like that all worked out. So let's dive in. So here's the process. Here's the template. First of all, we have a template. We have a plan. We have a plan for the composition. We've got an A section, which is in C major, and then a B section, which is in the relative minor, in A minor. So there's our first point of action there. We've got 4 bars of a phrase and then another 4 bars of another phrase. This is called a parallel period, a question and an answer. That makes up our A section. And we're literally going to copy and paste most of what occurs in the first 4 bars into the second 4. And we'll do the same thing in the B section. Question, copy that, paste it as the answer. So that just helps to make, 4 bars is not really enough to create a full complete sentence, a full complete idea. So that's what the parallel period helps us achieve. And then we go, in terms of the form, it's ternary form. So we go from the A section, repeat that twice, to the B section, play that twice, and then DC al fine. So we go back to the first section and finish where it says fine. So there's our form, our phrase structure, and then our chord progressions. We're using the primary chords. We've got 1, 4, 5, 1, the primary chords, C, F, G, and C. So we'll start with our melody. We're just going to use the notes of the chords. That will be step 1. Step 2, we're going to add the bass note, the root note of each chord into the bass. And step 3, we're going to add pedal tones into the middle of the texture. It's kind of like a sandwich, right? We'll have a melody and then a bass, and then we'll fill in the middle. So that's kind of the process here. All right, so let's begin. So we've got the notes of C major. Now I'm not going to think too hard about what the melody is. I'm just going to, got this limitation of the chord tones here. So I'll choose maybe just quarter notes, crotchets, maybe why don't we do something like that? C, C, E. So those are 2 of the 3 notes I have for my options. They're going up. I might make these F, A, and C. So I might go down and back up. And then G, B, and D. I'll go up to the G. 2 Gs and a D. I don't know why it's changed the tone like that, but that's okay. And then back to notes of a C triad, C, E, C. How about that? Okay. It doesn't seem like the most interesting melody. Perhaps you might not be thinking. You might be thinking, "Oh, that's, that's not a very interesting melody," but that's totally fine. Especially if you're a beginner composer, you don't need to be writing revolutionary melodies yet. So basic melodies are absolutely fine. So now I can copy and paste those notes, all of those notes, as the answer. So I'll do that now. Okay, so that's done. So now I've got pretty much a parallel period. All I'm going to do is, for the question, I'm going to end this note there at the start of the bar. So this is what the melody sounds like. And then the answer. Great. Now we'll repeat the process for the B section. So we're changing keys to A minor. So we're going to use now A minor, D minor, and E. Those are the primary chords, 1, 4, 5, and 1. So same process. We're going to use the chord tones, notes of the chord. So for our first one, A, C, and E. So let's start, maybe we'll start on E, nice open string. How about we go up to A like that? And notice I'm not even using all of the notes of the chord too. You could even use one note What if we try that? Just one note, just the F. And then E, G sharp, and B. Maybe I want to bring out that G sharp a little bit. G sharp, down to E, and then A minor. How about we go down A, E, and back up to A. Okay, there we go. So there's a melody. Let's have a listen to that. Sounds pretty good. Now I'll copy and paste that to form our parallel period. Okay, so that's done, and I'll just finish this off at the start of the measure there to create that sense of completion instead of continuation. So that's where the question kind of wants to continue to follow with the answer. But there's our melody. So let's have a listen. I'll play the entire melody now, and then we'll move on. So I'll play the melody, maybe without repeats, just to get a sense of how the melody's going. So here we go. And into the B section. Cool. Remember that if you're a little uncomfortable playing this, you can get Sibelius. I'm using Sibelius, or if you use MuseScore, or another great application I'd recommend, a great app is called Flat, which you can get on your smartphone. You can actually play back the music with those apps. You can also, this is a great feature of Sibelius, I'm not sure if MuseScore does this, but you can copy this into the tablature and it'll put it into tablature. So I'll do that now. There we go. So we've got the melody as tablature now as well. If you prefer tablature, this is what Sibelius is great with. The app I mentioned called Flat, you can actually input the notes using a guitar fretboard right onto your phone. So you might want to explore using that app instead of something like this, which is a bit more fancy, you know, bells and whistles. Okay, so we've got our melody. So the next step now is to add the bass line in, and all we need to do is add the root note of each chord in. So for the C chord, we add a C in the bass. For the F chord, we add an F in the bass. For G, we add a G in the bass, and so on. So I'll have to copy and paste the melody in, and then we'll start adding our bass line. All right, there we go. We've got the melody copied and pasted. We're going to add our bass line in. I might delete some of this information here. Okay, so this is really like process-driven composition now. The creativity is much more limited at this point. When it came to writing the melody, there were a lot more options, although we still had limitations. But now my suggestion is just to use the root note of each chord. So in that sense, we kind of just have to follow the instruction. So what we'll do is we'll add the C in the bass. I'll make that a fourth voice and into a whole note. And then we'll do an F. We can do a low F or an F there. Doesn't really matter. I'll make that a whole note. And then we have a G. I'll make that fourth voice whole note. And then back to C, octave, fourth voice whole note. And then I'm just going to copy and paste that bass line into the next line. There. Done. Okay. So let's have a listen to that. Okay, sounding good. we'll do the same process for the A minor section, for the B section. So we've got A minor, so we're just adding an A in the bass. Rid of that. So fourth voice whole note. We're going to D minor next, so add a D in the bass. Fourth voice whole note. E in the bass. Now the nice thing about this is they're all open strings. And back to A. And then I'll just copy and paste that into the bottom, into the answer. And let's have a listen to this section now. You hear that change of mood? Because we've changed key. Beautiful. Now I'll just put that into the tablature. So I'll just copy the bass line and put it in the tablature. All right, that's done. So we've got our melody and our bass. If we have a sandwich, that'll be the two buns on the bottom and the top. So the final step is we need the filling. Now a good filling to try out is something called a pedal tone. A pedal tone is like a repeating note. So as much as possible, we want to keep the repeating note in the middle, and we want to make it playable, make sure it's playable. So if possible, we'll probably try to use open strings if we can, but if not, that's okay too. But we want to also keep the pedal tone as one of the notes of the chord, one of the chord tones. All right, so let's try it. I'll copy and paste this across, doesn't take long. Copy and paste. Done. So we have step 3. We're going to add filler notes into the middle. We're going to add pedal tones in between each note of the melody. So let's see. We've got C, E, and G. We've got C in the bass there and C on the second string there. So we want to add something in the middle. That really only gives us 2 options. Either E here on the second fret of the 4th string, or an open G. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd prefer an open G, just because it's an open string. So I'll put the open G in. And then we want, if you could just double the melody like that if you want. If you want to keep the pedal going, to keep the flow going, you can do that. So it sounds like that instead of, so it gets a bit of motion sort of going. And then for the F chord, I'm going to do the same thing. We need a note that will fit in the middle of these two. We've got quite a distance here. We've got this C there, so we don't want the pedal note to be the same as the melody note too. So we've either got the option of, we've got a few options here. You know, we could do C like that. We could do C like on the 5th string, or we could do an open A potentially. Sounds a little bit muddy though, that A. Or we could do a F on the 4th string. That's sounding a little bit nicer, but maybe too many Fs. We're actually missing a note, aren't we? We've got F and we've got C, so I think we're kind of forced in a way to go for the A, but maybe not this A on the 5th string. But what A do you reckon? I think the A on the 3rd string. That's also quite close to this pedal note, that G going to the A. So let's put that in. Okay, so let's have a listen to that so far. Sounding nice. And then same thing for G. Now, if we look at the notes we've got so far, G, G, and D. So we're actually missing B. So where is a good place to put B? This is going to be interesting. We could use an open string. We could use an open B, but we'll get into trouble when we get to the D here, because that's on the same string. So what are we going to do there? We could do a bar chord like that, Or another option is, sometimes in composition we need to be a bit flexible. Why don't we just do this? We could just do that. Just to stop the predictability, just to change things up just a tiny bit. And then we go back to C major here. So we can go for the G pedal. That's the missing note, by the way. Again, C, C, E. So G's missing, so let's put an open G. I like open strings. Why not open string? Okay, there we go. So we've got our question done. So our answer, will literally copy and paste it in. So let me do that. I'll copy and paste the first 3 bars, copy those, and I'll paste them in here. I'll have to delete some things when I do that. Okay. That's all right. There we go. Don't need these chords because they're the same. And then we can put that in the tab as well. So there we go. There's our A section. So let's have a listen to the A section. Same process for the B section. We'll fill in the sandwich, put the filler into the middle of the buns. So we have the bass and the melody. We're going to add a pedal note in the middle. So here we have A, and A. Sorry, E, A, and A. So we're missing the C. We've got E, E, A. We're missing the C. So we probably want to put C as the pedal tone. Now that does make it a little trickier because the melody's leaping up. I mean, we could keep the C here on the first fret. It results in a bit of a stretch, so we might have to change the fingering of the C, but that's okay. Or if you want to stretch, you can do that. That's the beauty of composition. If something, if you've got options, you can choose the option that you prefer. Okay, so there we go. So, okay, here we've got D and F. D and F, so we're missing the A, so let's put that A as a pedal tone. There we go. Or I'm kind of tempted to change the melody there now because we've just got 4 Fs in a row. Before it was, or do something a little different there. It's sort of like, I want to do something, I feel like doing something like that now. Whoops. Okay, so that's, again with composition, sometimes you can, if you're feeling a certain way, you can just go in that direction a little bit. Here we've got E, G sharp, so we're missing the B. That's great, that's an open string. So we can do B, open. Back to A minor, we've got A and E, so we're missing the C, so let's put a C in. Great, this is very exciting because we're nearly finished, really, because now we just copy that, or the first 3 bars of our question, paste that into our answer. And we're done, really, because everything from this point on is repeating. We just have to fill in the tablature, so we'll just do that. I have to delete this stuff here. And there we go, we are complete. So let's have a listen. This is our complete composition. We've got our first section in C major, second section in A minor, and then we repeat back to C major. This time I'll play it in full with the repeats and everything. Here we go. So with very limited resources, we used only the primary chords, only the notes of the chords. We repeated a lot of material with the parallel periods, the question and the answer. We added the bass line in. We filled in the texture, filled in the sandwich with the filler, the pedal tones in the middle. And there we go. So if you need a bit of a process to get you started composing, that could be a really good framework to follow. You can follow the same form and the same harmonic structure, just come up with your own melody. And I think it's really great because it uses the full kind of resource, the full sound of the guitar, doesn't it? You get the bass, the melody, and the middle parts of the instruments resonating really nicely. And I think it's a fantastic starting point. Don't expect that you're going to write something that's, create a new style of. I think a lot of us have very, very high expectations for our first composition, much higher than, I think, if I gave someone a guitar for the first time, what do you expect to do with a guitar for the very first time? If this is your first composition, something like this, I think that's a very, very high standard for your first composition. So set the bar a little bit lower. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't aim like I'm going to create a new style, be so super original for my first composition. It's much better to just stick with the basics, the fundamentals, the foundations at first, and then later on you can add your own style, your own flavor. You'll find that will come later. So I hope this process helps you. And I think any guitarist, whatever style, steel string, electric, classical, whatever style you play, I think this will adapt really nicely for that kind of guitar that you play. So hope you enjoy that process and see you next time.